Hey everybody, Ben here from DFC Foams and Cinderblock Studios, and today we're talking about mixing complex colors. We're going to talk about what they are, and I'm going to show you how to mix them yourself. This is probably as close as I'm going to get to teaching you how to mix colors and sort of color match with your eye. So what are complex colors anyway? A complex color is simply one that is mixed with another color to give it a richer depth. When I first heard the term complex color, I was in high school and I thought, oh, complex, so more colors. Not necessarily more colors, just the same color mixed with a lot of different colors. So today we're going to be mixing with our three primaries, red, blue, and yellow, and seeing what kind of interesting and complex mixes we can get out of those. Okay, so let's start out talking about today's tools. I've got a standard painting knife just for mixing, as well as an old sort of beat up filbert brush. You can use whatever brush you want for this kind of exercise, but for this one, I think an old brush works just fine. Flat brushes are good too. My surface today is a piece of watercolor paper. I have three colors laid out: Cad Yellow Medium, Phthalo Blue, and Cad Red Medium. Each of these are split up into two different sections, warm and cool, and we'll get into what those mean later. I've also got a small color wheel, a little pocket-sized one, off to the side for reference, and we'll be pointing to that a couple times throughout the course of today. And of course, as always, you'll see my palette and mixing with my water over on the side here to the right, and that'll show up a little bit later in this video. Okay, so what do I really mean when I say warm mixes and cool mixes? Essentially, this is what you want to think about when you're talking about how to match color, how to mix color. Whatever color you pick, say yellow in this case, it's going to lean one way or another on the color wheel, depending on how you mix with it. So for example, a warmer yellow is going to lean a little bit more red, and a cooler yellow will lean a little bit more blue and maybe even a little bit into the purple as well. Now it should be noted that yellow, green, and red, violet actually go both ways in terms of warm colors and cool colors, depending on how you look at them. So when we get further down the line here for each warm and cool, you're going to see a little bit of similarity between the two of them. And you might wonder, okay, how am I going to tell the difference? Is it actually a warm mix or a cool mix? Because it becomes more neutral, it's going to depend on what colors are surrounding it. So if there's a lot of blues around that mix that maybe it has a purple to it, it's going to lean to a warm color or a cool color depending on, again, the background colors. But of course that's not really something we're getting into today because our background color is just white. And so when we talk about color in terms of foreground, background, well, that'll just be another video. So that's enough of me talking. We're going to go ahead and just start mixing on this stuff. I'm going to dip my brush in the water and just kind of get a nice puddle of yellow out into my palette that we can kind of mix in one direction or another. You want to make note that the color of your water as it starts to change will actually affect the paint a little bit. So as you work, try and keep that in mind. I'm also going to make a second pile of a little bit more of a violet color. I want to make note here that I picked Phthalo Blue today because I think it's a good middle ground blue. It's as close as you can get to something like French Ultramarine, which is in a lot of color theory sets. But personally, I like the hue of Phthalo Blue a little bit more than say an Ultramarine. I think it has a deeper, richer color. Also, Phthalo Blue comes in two different types of shades. This is Phthalo Blue Green shade. It also comes in, I think, a red shade. And like I was just mentioning before, whichever direction the color leans kind of will depend on the different complex color you're using. So even the paint manufacturers understand that colors are going to lean in a certain direction. When you're buying paint colors, that's actually going to make a difference when you see something like, oh, this is a warmer red, or oh, this is a cooler red. So hopefully throughout the course of this video, you're going to be able to start recognizing those relationships. So actually, I still have that purple in my brush. I really got to push to rinse that out. Okay, so we have our yellow. I want to start pushing it a little bit warmer. So we're going to start with just the tiniest bit of red, just kind of grazing the top of my bristles, or yeah, the bristles of the brush here, to grab a little bit. In this case, if you watch the color theory video on color value, red in this case is a darker color than the yellow. It's going to be a little stronger in the tint. So that was just a tiny little bit of that. And again, if you to reference it, it's up on the left here, the base color for all of these. So we're just going to put a little bit of that down. And, as you can see, it is leaning a little bit warmer. So again, we're just going to keep on mixing. A little bit more red, a little bit more red. And basically until we get sort of a nice orange, I'd say. A little warmer of a red here. Or a yellow, excuse me. And this is more of an orange. Now we're not making a color value chart here, so this is probably about as far as I'm going to take that yellow, because that's basically orange now, and we're not making an orange thing. So now you have those simple, 1-to-1 mixes, so red and yellow. Now we're going to take that purple we made earlier and just mix the tiniest bit of that in. Actually, this is much bluer than I would have wanted it to. Let's get more red, more yellow, a lot more yellow. And this is our first real complex color. Because we're mixing, more than just 2 colors together. We're mixing 3 and creating something that it's still yellow, but it is respectively very different. So I'm going to add a little more yellow in here. Still keeping it warm. A little red. It's pretty close. It's a little redder though. Seems to be good. Just mixing that right on the paper partly too there. Just occurred to me that part of these warm and cool mixes, I'm going to need black and white for these too. Just did not set this up well enough. So I'm just going to get a little bit of black in the center. And a little white in the center. This will help us out considerably with our mixes. Now, a lot of artists will tell you never want to use black on your palette, and they tell you that mostly just because you don't need it necessarily to get a strong color. Let's say, I want to make it dark, so I'm going to use blue and black, or red and black. It's sort of an easy way out that way. It doesn't teach you to make these complex colors. However, when you start using black in a slightly different way, start using it as a mixing color, it'll actually free you up considerably. So that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to take sort of this color we were just using, sort of this orange. This is actually really close to like a yellow ochre. We're going to add a tiny bit of black to that. And one thing that is interesting is when you add black to yellow, it tends to make a rather interesting greenish color. In which case, black and white being neutrals, just like the yellow, green, and red, violet, they will sort of act, again, in both directions, at least to some degree. So this is actually leaning a little bit cooler with the black, possibly because I had some of that red-blue in that mix. I'm going to drag a bit more yellow in, grab that red. We're just using the residual sort of black mix we had on that brush. That's sort of a yellowish red there. This demo is a lot more experimental than my others. I'm going to add a little white to this, brighten it up. Mix that right in there. This white is a nice warm white now, so sort of this tinted yellow, warm white. Rinse my brush out a little. You get back to more of a pure color here. And I'm going to grab that little bit of a violet, which was too blue. And here's our neutral yellow, which I'm going to put actually a little further over here. That's more just like of a brown. So this is a nice sort of warm brown because it is that yellow base. And at this point, I'm just taking from color to color to color, just seeing what I get in many ways. A lot of times when I'm working on a painting, I'm mixing a big batch of one color, but in mixing a nice solid complex color, you're going to get a lot more unique and interesting mixes that way. Granted, my style of painting is a little bit different than a lot of these that I'm showing you here today with mixing these colors, but it does give you a nice understanding of these are all the different kind of shades that you can make when you just start to play on your palette. So now we're already starting to get a lot of cool mixes into sort of these neutral grounds. So we're going to switch over and work on some cool mixes with our yellow. So yellow and a tiny bit of blue. Now blue is a lot more of a potent color than red, so you don't need a ton of it. This is our first one. Pretty much the same, just a little bit of a difference. Again, see, look at that guy, it got green really fast. There's a cooler mix again, a little more blue. We're going to get a bit of the purplish color, which actually is leaning more blue. Mix that up, I'll pull this in. Grabbing some of the warm color as well, just mixing that all together. Ooh, that's a nice one. That's a really nice shade right there. Look at that. That's beautiful. I'm going to mix a little black in as well, like we did before. Actually, I said black is more neutral. I actually think it's depending. It also kind of depends on which black you're using. This black has some ivory black. It's ivory black and Mars black. Mars black is more neutral. Ivory black is going to lean a little cooler, which is why I'm getting some of these colors the way that I am. Look at that nice dark. I always have been a fan of the way black and yellow mix to make that green. That's always really cool. That here with the purple. We're adding a lot more yellow to this to warm it back up into still being a yellow and not just being a green. A red in there too. And it's proportional too, so I'm adding red, but it's not suddenly becoming a warm color because I'm adding red. It's just becoming less of the color, less of the cool mix that it was. So we're getting into a lot of greens here. I'm going to rinse this brush out. And start making maybe a cool, I'll keep the blue. I want to mix that into the white in our yellow. That's just blue. I'm going to have to get a second side palette here. Things have gotten a little messy. Slide this down a little. I apologize, I don't have the white backing on this one. But it should work for what we need here. We have our yellow that we had before, a little bit of that blue and white. I'm running out of that yellow really fast here. Right. That's a good cool mix. Still leaning a little greener than I'd like. Get some of this in there. That's a little more yellow now. Just really about which way you want to lean it, one direction or the other in this case. So I think that's a pretty good set for our yellows. We're going to go ahead and jump into our blues now, since our blues seem to be dominating our palette. I'll have to switch out my palettes in a bit once we get to the red. Alright, so again, our blue, pretty simple color. Really, really nice in that regard. Nice bright blue, but has a nice deep undertone to it. Now naturally, this blue, of course, being a green shade paint, is going to lean a little bit cooler. This is just with a little bit of that green color we had in here. Actually, we're going to go ahead and hit the cool ones first, since we're already kind of there. You can mix that black in, make sort of that deep, cool color. One of the things I love mixing with the phthalo blue is black to give it that nice, rich tone. Kind of creates sort of like a navy blue. Really, really great color. So, still sticking with our cool blues, so we mix in our yellow. Now yellow will add a little bit of warm to our blue, but as long as you don't go overboard with it, it still sticks to that nice sort of cool green color. I think anything more than this, though, and you're actually leaning towards a warmer tone. Warmer hue, excuse me. So something like a yellow-green, like we mentioned before, is going to be a little more of a warmer color. You know, you add orange and red to it. You're just going to get something that leans to be more of a warm blue rather than a cool blue. Something like that. Almost don't even see the blue in that. Still very interesting. So sort of a bluish violet color. Again, that's going to be a nice warm blue. You know, the more green you lean, you're going to have a little more of that cooler color. And this is basically the same color, just with some bluish green added to it. And again, you just see those differences, cooler, warmer. You know, you can start thinking about how they mix in those regards. So black to a bluish purple. Keeps us nice and cool. A little more red. Get some of that other warmer mix we had before there. The yellows. And orange. Make sure it's still a blue. And you know, your color's a bit warmer. Alright, I'm going to rinse my brush a little here. Let's punch this up. We're going to add some white to a lot of these colors we're doing here. And white will tint everything up without destroying our values too much. So you added white to this, a lot of this darker color I was working on here, and you're getting a nice cool gray. This is like a slate color. That's really nice. The greener you go, you know, with the white, you're going to get sort of a mint. Now, of course, this is warmer than this, but in the grand scheme of things, you know, we're still talking about cool colors. Lighter blue, the white. Even a little black in here will still kind of keep it nice and cool. And again, more blue you add, you know, it cools it down, keeps it nice and simple. Even adding a little bit of that violet doesn't do too much to it. Still keeps it relatively on the cool side. Now again, more red you add. Now you're talking about a much warmer blue. This is more of that mid-grade violet that can actually kind of lean in other directions, though this is a little warmer. Something with sort of a white and yellow mix. You're looking at a warm blue, but something that really leans almost to a neutral gray. You know, the more you think about it, and as you mix it, you're like, okay, there's yellow in here, and I can start to see that. You can see a lot of this color in here as well. Not something you always recognize, but the more you play with it, the more you mix with it, you're just going to start figuring these things out. White, red, blue, light purple. This is almost this same color, but because we're leaning for the red, you're seeing a lot more of the red in here and a lot more of the blue in this. So warm, cool, you know. A yellow with a red to kind of keep that up in the orange section, but then just enough blue to kind of bring it back, make it interesting. Make sure we're keeping with our blue. Same deal. It's a warmer blue. Right about like that. Okay, so as mentioned before, it's probably going to be a good idea to switch out my palettes. I'm actually going to do something a little more interesting here. I'm going to slide one over, bring this other one down to the side, and put my extra pool of yellow over here. That way I'm not crowding things too much. So I'm going to grab a little more of my cad yellow. we're going to mix into our warm red tones. So warm reds, they're going to be really similar to a lot of these with the warm yellows. However, you're going to see a little more of a red bias, of course. So rather than starting with the yellow and mixing red in, we're going to start with the red and mix yellow in. Actually, I got a little bit of residual blue here, so I'll throw that in my cool as my first cool red. We have that solid red, we add a little yellow in. And you notice I'm not rinsing my brush too often. Using all that residual color from all of these on the brush will make your colors, again, increasingly more complex. So this is a nice red, just a little bit of yellow in there. Just changing that ever so slightly. We're not too different in either of these from that first red that we started with. We're adding just enough to make it interesting. Some of this blue is dragging in. I don't care. You know, it's not the point of making these colors. It's not supposed to be perfect and pristine. Complex colors are messy. They're, you know, gonna have some wear and tear to them. You know, there's a little more yellow in this one. That's, you know, much closer to an orange. Gonna add a tiny bit of blue into this. Not gonna overpower it. Need to keep it yellow mostly. But that little extra blue will kind of keep, you know, our colors a bit more complex. Now this is a little more toned down than what we just had. Still really good though. I'm gonna grab a little white here. Now this white has some blue in it. Again, not a problem. Mix it in some yellow, warm it back up. That's a really nice one. Looks like I'm gonna need some more white here. Just gonna stick that on the side palette as well. A lot of red still in my brush. I rinsed that, it didn't do much. That's okay though, we're just gonna dive right into that. Add a little yellow to it. Warm it back up. That's really nice. A little more yellow in that, I think. More yellow, a little more white. Let's brighten that up. That's a good color right there. A lot more white, a lot more red. Bring it up to like an orange pink. Salmon even. That's really, really nice. Alright, let's add a little black in. Let's get crazy. Black, over to our yellow, over to our red. I'm running out of room here. Just gonna mix this right down on the paper behind it. That, and the black. There's actually some green in here too. Not a problem. That's a nice muted red. And this, again, actually kind of leaning into where our violets were up here. Speaking of violets, let's go ahead and make more of that violet-y color. Get some blue in there. Mix that down in here. Okay, I'm really having too much fun now. We'll call that our last warm red. This is actually starting to get to be a cool red, especially with that black in there. So let's go ahead and start mixing up our cool reds as well. So we have our red. We had some blue in here before, so let's just, you know, mix right into that. This already is turning out to be a nice, nice cool red here. Now, depending on how far you take this, you could call this cool red a warm blue. But again, that's starting to get a little too over the top, mixing our terms there. So we don't want to take it too far into there. I'm gonna pull some green into this. Now I got to be careful on how far green. If the green leans yellow, then of course you're starting to get back to a warm mix. So you have to kind of keep it with the cooler blues or cooler greens, excuse me. So something like this with our red, which is real nice. I'm gonna actually get some white on there. One of the things I do when I'm trying to figure out, I'm like, okay, this color's really dark. I actually can't quite tell what this color is. How do I know if it's a true neutral, or at least as close to a true neutral as I can get? And then if you add a little bit of white to it, you can usually tell. I kind of did this early on when I started mixing my own browns. I just add a little bit of white, and I'm like, oh, it's still a little bit too red, or a little bit too whatever. Pull some red back in there, blue, grayish, greenish. At this point, you're just mixing everything together and seeing what you get. Violet. I feel like we should lean a little greener. See, we're leaning warmer with this yellow. Make sure our red stays red. A bit of orange in there, a little bit back into the blue. That's a nice color there. A little too warm, actually. That's more of what I was looking for. Take that. Where's our white? Let's see what that really looks like. And there we have an interesting set of cool reds as well. So this is just a little exercise that you can do at home to really kind of teach yourself how to start mixing colors and thinking about different colors in terms of color intensity, color hue, color value, and how to mix those and take them in one direction of warm or cool to the other. Complex colors in your paintings are super important because it shows intention. It shows the thought you have behind every individual part of that piece. You're putting a lot of work into mixing those complex colors and using them, maybe not in big batches, but in small areas, and then remixing and remixing and remixing your colors again and again and again to get a more dynamic feel to that piece. Now, it should be noted for someone who paints like I do, I actually avoid complex colors, at least to some degree. I'd more focus on complex layers. My technique in acrylics is a lot about mixing big batches of color, but then layering them in different levels and different viscosities, different fluidities to them, trying to keep things either in glaze form or in thick, heavy form to create a more dynamic piece in terms of simple colors, but in layers. It's also important to note if you're doing something that's more a flat designed piece, then in this case you don't want to use complex colors, you want to use more simple ones. So anything that you're doing with maybe a fine brush trying to get some nice detail with, you may want to try and use something a little more simple, especially if you're going to do something, say, anime manga style, maybe something that's industrial design. You don't really want to necessarily have a lot of different colors for those things. So that's about it for this video. Be sure to subscribe to the channel for more like this, and this has been from DMC Films and Center Block Studios. See you guys next time.